everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Shift with Gina. This podcast is an accompaniment to my women's health group called The Shift. It's hosted on Mighty Networks, link in the description. We do weekly workouts, health challenges. We're currently doing a 7-week fertility series, and we're always posting content like recipe shares and daily health tips where you can join in, whether your goal is weight loss or just learning to eat better or trying to get pregnant or even going through menopause. We have women from all different stages and ages in my group. So that's a place to be if you want to dive deeper into health and wellness in general. But this podcast talks a lot about women's issues that are certainly related to health and fertility and pregnancy and motherhood, but also to just some general cultural issues that I see happening in American society today that I think a lot of women are interested in. So today we're just going to talk about one thing, the viral clip of Khloe Kardashian talking about her surrogacy experience. In the last episode I did, I happened by chance to talk about surrogacy, and I happened to share a photo of Khloe Kardashian in the hospital bed with her son right after he was born via surrogate. And I actually ended up sharing that photo because there was a viral tweet of some gay dude who decided to buy a baby and hire a woman's uterus to grow the baby, and then, did the same process where as soon as the baby was born, he took the baby into a different hospital room and just, took him home randomly. And I shared his picture and I shared Khloe Kardashian's picture, and I talked about how surrogacy is just a really harmful process to everyone involved, particularly the child. And it just happened that about a week later, there was a clip from the Hulu show, The Kardashians. They've had a reality TV show for a long time now, and I think they recently moved over to Hulu. And there was a viral clip that was shared all across social media platforms of Khloe talking about how difficult the surrogacy process was for her. And so it just happened that I had done a video about it about a week before. So I want to talk about this video. I'm going to show it to you. And I know a lot of different content creators are talking about this, but I want to relate a lot of this to what I was saying in my previous video, my previous episode, because if you have noticed, I feel very strongly about surrogacy, particularly after becoming a mother and experiencing pregnancy and birth and motherhood. And I have a much different take on surrogacy now than I did probably 5 years ago. And because it's becoming so common, it's becoming a much more common, normalized experience in many different types of parenthood, whether it's gay couples buying a baby, or whether it's celebrities or influencers who don't want to ruin their body, they're hiring women to give birth for them, or whether it's women who are struggling with infertility issues, because we know that infertility is on the rise. The World Health Organization just announced that 1 in every 6 people globally are suffering from infertility, where I think just a few years ago, the numbers were 1 in every 8 people. So infertility is on the rise. So this is one of the reasons why surrogacy has become much more common and much more normalized. So I think this is a really important topic. Let's watch this video. It's about 1.5 minutes. And then we'll discuss. It's titled, Khloe is having a hard time connecting with Tatum due to having a surrogate. Tatum is her son. So here we go. She's talking to Scott Disick, ex-boyfriend of Kourtney Kardashian, and she's talking to her sister Kim.
Surrogate process. Kim knows it's really hard for me.
Well, what does that mean?
She had a really hard time accepting the whole process.
Got it.
It's a mind. It's really the weirdest
I
thing.
could see
I
that.
do think that there is a difference. When the baby is in your belly, the baby actually feels your real heart. Think about it.
Right.
It touches your organ. There's no one else on this planet that will feel you from the inside like that, like your heart,
I got so many good jokes.
And people can connect in different ways. People could not connect.
Do you feel less connected? Mm-hmm. That'll take a minute.
Yeah, people say.
I mean, listen,
but Kim
the other was
said
10 months of
hers
walking
was
around.
easy. This is not easy.
I definitely buried my head in the sand during that pregnancy, that I didn't digest what was happening. And so I think when I went to the hospital, I really think that was the first time that really registered. And it has nothing to do with the baby. It's just, you're like, okay, we're having a baby and this is my son and I'm taking him home with me. I definitely was in a state of shock, I think, from my entire experience in general. Don't stop. I felt really guilty that this woman just had a my baby and I take the baby and then I go to another room and you're sort of separated. Like, I felt it's such a transactional experience because it's not about him. I wish someone was honest about surrogacy and the difference of it, but it doesn't mean it's bad or good. It's still great.
Notice she said there's a lot of things to unpack there, but one of the things that stands out to me the most is that Khloe says surrogacy felt transactional to her because during the entire pregnancy, her son's pregnancy, the surrogate's pregnancy, she was removed from the situation. And I think from what I know from social media, I think she was also something was going on with her baby daddy. Like she found out he was cheating on her again. And, they have this very tumultuous, toxic relationship. Like I think pretty much every Kardashian does with her boyfriend or husband. So she was very removed and disconnected from this pregnancy. Also disconnected because it wasn't her pregnancy. She hired a woman who I'm sure is nowhere near the status of wealth that the Kardashians are. Probably a woman who needed the money, and she was probably paid $50K to carry this child. And Khloe admits that she all of a sudden is called to go to the hospital. She's in the hospital room watching this woman give birth to her baby. And it felt very transactional because then all of a sudden, as soon as this baby comes out of the womb, you saw it in the video, he's placed on Khloe's chest, a stranger to him. Now, whenever I talk about this, a very common response is, well, that's not the surrogate's baby. That's Khloe's baby genetically. That's Khloe and Tristan's baby genetically. So that woman has nothing to do with that baby. This is the most absurd thing I think I've ever heard about pregnancy. And like I said in my last episode, this is what happens when we cheapen and diminish the sacredness and the beauty of and the miracle of pregnancy and birth. You think that mother, that woman has zero connection with this child who is inside of her belly for 9 months? You think that baby that is just a clump of cells, right? And has no idea who his mommy is, has no idea what his mommy's heartbeat sounds like, how his mommy's voice and laugh sound. We think that our bodily functions are just totally random and they don't mean anything. And so, of course, this baby inside this woman's belly has zero connection, right? So the baby doesn't know that he genetically belongs to Khloe and Tristan. Khloe is a complete stranger to this child. 100% a stranger. He doesn't know her smell. He doesn't know the sound of her voice. He knows nothing about this woman. Nothing. Zero. That is objectively traumatic. To be taken away from the only mommy, the only human being that you know intimately for 9 months, and to be placed into the arms of a complete stranger. I don't care if it's genetically related to you. I don't care if you have if you share DNA. That woman, Khloe Kardashian, is a total stranger to that baby in the beginning. And now, shocker, she's having a lot of trouble connecting with her son. And she feels like the entire process was transactional because that's exactly what surrogacy is. Surrogacy is transactional. I know this is difficult to hear and it's difficult to stomach, especially if you are someone who is struggling with infertility and you feel like that's your only chance of having biological children. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We're going to get to that, but it doesn't change the fact that surrogacy is at its core transactional. Khloe Kardashian hit it on the head. She was completely right. It is a transactional thing that you do with a child, with a baby, the most precious thing in the world, an innocent human life that has just come out of the womb. You treat him as if he's a commodity, as if he's an object to be passed around to different people who have the highest bid. Surrogacy is incredibly dystopian. It's a very dystopian thing that, in the past we would only hear about in novels of babies being bought, being created in a petri dish, being grown in random vessels, these random women. And at the beginning of the video, you hear what Kim says, I actually do think it's a little bit different when the baby is inside of you. Like, I think it's different. And the way that she says it, I mean, this is partly just like the Valley Girl way that the Kardashians talk, but she says it as if it's this big epiphany. She says it as if it's this huge realization. You know what I realized? I think it actually is a little bit different when the baby's inside of you. Yeah. Welcome to the conversation. That's our entire point here, is that it's a completely different experience. And Khloe admits that she's having a really difficult time coming to terms with the fact that this is her son and that she has very little connection with this boy. And you watch this and you feel really sick to your stomach because, you know, the Kardashians are some of the most spoiled people on the planet. Yes, one could argue that they work hard and, you know, they rose to the top through hard work and, you know, some other shady stuff that they did online. But at the end of the day, we see the Kardashians as these very spoiled, wealthy people who have private jets and they have everything they need, right? They have an entire team of people to just go shopping for them. So you watch this and you get viscerally angry. I know a lot of people watch this and they're like, this is so disgusting. They're hiring women to give birth because of their own vanity, because they don't want to go through the difficulties of pregnancy. That is very disturbing to see. But one thing that people respond to, one thing they say in response to this is, well, I don't support surrogacy for vanity reasons for celebrities and influencers, but I do support surrogacy when it's the last resort for a woman to have children because she's struggling with infertility. I want to get into this because this makes zero sense. And I'm going to explain to you why. You should never accept this argument. So first of all, we have to agree on one thing. We have to agree that surrogacy is detrimental to the child. It's detrimental to all parties involved. I mean, the only party that really benefits from this is the parent who purchases the child and who rents the womb of the surrogate, right? But the mother who grows this child in her belly and develops an intimate connection and relationship with this child for 9 months, it's detrimental to her, right? There's plenty of, here's the thing. It annoys me when people are like, well, where's the research? Show the studies. Sure, there are studies showing that mothers who give their children away for adoption, they're much more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, substance abuse. They're much more likely to struggle hormonally to recalibrate their bodies because there's no skin-to-skin connection. There's no breastfeeding. You know, again, going back to this idea that our bodies are wonderfully and fearfully made by God, and God designed our bodies perfectly, and every single bodily function has a purpose. And that is certainly true for pregnancy and birth and postpartum. So there is a purpose. There's a reason why you have skin-to-skin contact. There's a reason why you breastfeed so much in the first few months of the child's life, of course, to give nutrition, but also to bond very intimately and deeply with this child that is suddenly in your lap, who was in your belly for 9 months. It's a very purposeful process that you have with this child. And, you know, when a mother just gives the child away, it has very significant physical, emotional, physiological, mental effects on her. Very detrimental effects on her. It doesn't just happen overnight where you just give the baby away and it's just like it never happened. So it's not good for the surrogate, and it's certainly not good for the child. It's absolutely horrific and traumatic for the child. Again, you need studies. There's plenty of studies showing that children who are given away at birth or as infants, whether it's due to adoption, like there was a trauma or a tragedy in the family, or whether it's due to surrogacy, that child struggles to develop the proper neurological connections in the early years of life. This can have significant effects on the way that they develop emotional intelligence, the way that they develop stress responses, the way that they end up communicating with people in their life. And of course, it can have some physical effects, the way that they grow. They're not getting the breast milk that they're supposed to be having from their mommy who gave birth to them. And there's plenty of research out there proving this. But here's the thing. You have to remember that, and this might throw some people off, but this whole idea of where's the study, where's the data, where are the statistics, this is a uniquely modern liberal demand. Why on earth do you think you need studies and research and peer-reviewed data to prove to you that it's detrimental for a baby to be ripped away from his mommy at birth? For all of human history, we have accepted that mothers should be with their babies. For all of human history, we have accepted that pregnancy and birth have very important bodily functions that help you bond with your child, that help you develop your child's health and nurse the mother's health back to normal. For all of human history, we've accepted that a mother plays the most significant role for the baby in the first few months and first few years of his or her life. We did not ever need studies or data or numbers or research to prove this. And now, all of a sudden, we live in this era where you need data and studies to prove that a woman is a woman and a man is a man. You need data and studies to prove to you that it's good for children to be raised by their parents, that it's good for a child to be close to his mommy when he's born. You need studies and data to prove to you that it's detrimental and harmful to an infant's health to pass a newborn off to a couple of strangers after he's been born? Like, how have we arrived at this point in our society where we desperately need this data to prove to us universal truths that we have known for all of human history until like 5 minutes ago, when we decided that, oh, a man can be a woman if he just decides that that's his gender identity. Women can have penises too. Men can breastfeed, but it's called chest feeding. Like, we've turned into this upside down society where all of the universal truths that we held to be true for all of human history have suddenly been turned on their head, and we suddenly demand these ridiculous peer-reviewed studies to prove what we've always known, what is evident through simple like life experience and the biology that we observe. So I don't even think we need to prove studies and research that shows that surrogacy is not healthy and not helpful to the baby, particularly. And it's also not helpful to the parent who purchases the baby, who rents the woman's womb, because then you end up with parents like this. Khloe Kardashian can't fully bond with the child. Now, is that going to be forever? No, I'm sure that she's going to find ways to bond and to feel like she has a connection with the child. But still, again, surrogacy is not good for anyone involved. In fact, it's harmful. So now we've established that. If you can agree that surrogacy is harmful for all parties involved, tell me why it's any different when a celebrity hires a surrogate out of vanity than it is when a woman hires a surrogate because she's struggling with infertility. No matter what the intention is behind the action, the outcome is the same. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter that you have good intentions, and that it doesn't matter what your reason is. Surrogacy always has the same result. And that result is harmful to the child involved. It's harmful to the surrogate mother, and it's harmful to the parent that brings the baby home. So I talk about this on my social media and in my women's group, and I know that it's a very difficult topic because there are a lot of women out there who are wrestling with infertility. And my heart breaks for those women. They deserve support, and they need care from their family, their community, from their medical providers, their health providers. I think we also need to do a better job as a society of identifying what the true causes of infertility are, because they are rapidly on the rise. We're not even willing to talk about what the real causes are. We just want to slap a Band-Aid on it, do IVF, do surrogacy, whatever the case may be. Soon we're going to be just making babies in a petri dish without any man or woman needed. And it's a very difficult topic to approach when you're talking to women who are struggling with infertility. But I do not believe that a woman's desire to become a biological mother should ever trump a child's well-being. And I think it's wrong that we've gotten to the point where we are putting women's desires on such a pedestal that they come before the needs of babies and the needs of other women. Another thing I touched on last time is that, they consented to this. The surrogate consents to this. No more consent-based morality. Just because someone consents to something doesn't make it right. Just because someone consents to doing porn doesn't make it right. Just because someone consents to carrying a baby and then giving him away as soon as he's born does not make it right. So it doesn't matter what the intent is behind surrogacy. It's always going to be wrong and harmful for the child involved. You know, and I get some responses like, well, you think a woman doesn't deserve to be a mom. I'm not talking about what people deserve. I'm not talking about what people don't deserve. I'm talking about what's right for the child. I'm talking about what's objectively moral, because it doesn't matter what the intent is behind the action. There is objectively moral behavior and there's objectively immoral behavior. And if we start to go down this gray, messy path of, well, I didn't mean for it to be this way, so we should do it because it's right, but that person meant for it to be wrong, so then we shouldn't do it that way. And if we're judging what's moral based on how people feel and what people's intents are, then that's a very dangerous road to go down. Another thing I wanted to respond to today is I say, you know, I'm not supportive of surrogacy, and people are like, okay, well, that's what adoption is, so you're not supportive of adoption either because it's the same thing. No. Surrogacy and adoption are not at all the same thing. Number one, you can put it in a nutshell of this. This is the reason why. Surrogacy places a priority on the adult's desires and wants. Adoption places the priority on a child's well-being and a child's health. Okay? So a surrogate situation is when a couple or a woman desperately wants to have a baby, and her desire to have a baby is more important than that baby's well-being. Adoption, on the other hand, is a situation where every adult in the environment is trying to prioritize the child's well-being, trying to put the child in a good home, trying to correct a trauma or a tragedy that has happened. Because if you think about situations like adoption, whether it's at infancy, birth, or when the child is older, it almost always comes from trauma or tragedy. Whether the mother died at a very young age when the child was young, or whether the mother was a drug addict and was not fit to raise a child, whether it was due to emotional abuse or emotional neglect or due to some sort of addiction issue. These are all tragic, traumatic instances where a child needs to be removed from that home and placed into a better home. So adoption is meant to correct or to rectify these traumas into which children are born, right? That's the whole point, is to place them into a better environment. However, surrogacy, you are manufacturing an environment of trauma and harm to the child in order to please adults. And that is wrong. You know, we live in a broken world that is full of hurt and pain and suffering. And no matter what we do, we're never going to be able to escape that. So there are always going to be children that come out of abusive, neglectful, traumatic homes. So that means that there will always be children who need to be adopted. Adoption is not the same as surrogacy, because you are not intentionally putting the child in a traumatic situation in order to please parents, in order to please a woman or a man. Do you see the difference? It's a very important distinction. It's just as ridiculous to compare adoption to surrogacy as it is to compare abortion to miscarriage. They're two totally different things. You can't tell me that going into the doctor's office to intentionally end the life of your child is the same thing as a child who naturally, sadly, dies in the womb. Two very different things. So no, adoption and surrogacy are not the same. I'm not saying that the adoption industry is perfect. There's a lot that needs to be changed about the adoption industry. And, you know, there's a lot of people that we can interview about that, a lot of experts out there who shed light on how unproductive some parts of the adoptive industry can be. You know, there are 36 families for every one child waiting to be adopted. 36 families who want to adopt for every one child that needs to be adopted. So there's certainly things about the adoption industry that need to change. However, that doesn't mean that adoption is the same as surrogacy. It doesn't mean that in the right circumstances, adoption places the child's well-being first and foremost above the adult's needs. So, you know, you look at this video of Khloe Kardashian and it's very easy to just write off what the Kardashians are doing because they're this silly celebrity family, you know, silly, vapid socialites. But you look at this kind of stuff on TV right now and it's being normalized. And I'm very nervous and concerned that in the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to see many more cases of surrogacy because we're seeing many more women who are struggling with infertility. And instead of trying to get to the root issue of why so many women are desperately struggling with infertility, we constantly come to these new solutions, modern solutions to throw at women that are actually quite harmful. And I think it's very scary, and I think it's very sad that instead of actually giving women what they need and deserve, which is care in terms of treating infertility, care on how to prevent infertility, we are just throwing these Band-Aid solutions at them that are actually harmful to them, to the baby involved, and to the woman involved if there's a surrogate involved. Khloe Kardashian says, I feel really guilty that this woman just had my baby and then I take the baby and I go into another room. That is horrific. And I think any mom who is listening, I want you to just imagine what it would be like. You gave birth to your child and a random person comes in and takes that baby away and goes to another room and then takes the baby home. I don't care what the intent is. That is so scary for the child. And that baby knows a lot more of what's going on in the womb than we give him credit for. I mean, there are even videos of, very sad videos of doctors performing second-term abortions. And the baby is crawling to the other side of the uterus to escape the surgical tools that are trying to rip his limbs apart. Babies know a lot more than we think they do. They respond to mommy's voice. They kick when they hear mommy's voice or daddy's voice. They have personalities in the womb. I'm sure a lot of you who have been pregnant before, you know that your child has a personality in the womb. So of course your baby's going to know that you're his mommy. Of course your baby's going to be scared if he comes out of the womb and he's handed to some random woman. Why? Just because she's rich and she had the means to purchase him? It's really disturbing. And I think that surrogacy is as unnatural as it could possibly get. And I know people are like, there were times in the past, plenty of times in the good old days where, a woman was infertile and she had a sister or a friend or a cousin who would give birth for her. Yeah, I'm sure that happened, but it was very rare, and that definitely doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. Now, I'm not saying that, people could easily twist this and say that, okay, well, if you don't agree with adoption, so you're saying that like a teenage girl who gets pregnant and doesn't want to keep the baby, you think she should have an abortion because it's going to be traumatic for her to give the baby away? No, I think that every baby deserves a right to life. And if we end up in a traumatic situation, a tragic situation where that has to happen, it's unfortunate, but I would rather that baby have a chance at life than to be killed in the womb. But I think as much as we can, we need to prevent these kinds of tragic situations because it's going to significantly affect children. And I think the more surrogate babies we see that are born, the more mental illness is going to be in their future, the more substance abuse. I mean, I was just reading some data today about how a child who loses a parent at a young age, a child who loses a biological parent at a young age, is much more likely to suffer from substance abuse, depression, anxiety. They really struggle with emotional stress responses. They struggle to develop connections with people. They struggle to perform well in school and perform well at work. Of course, duh. Again, this is information that we accepted and knew for all of human history until like 5 minutes ago in the postmodern world where we demand peer-reviewed studies to tell us what we already know. So that's my take on surrogacy. I think that it's important to have these conversations. If you are a woman who is struggling with infertility, my heart goes out to you, and I want you to know that there are ways to treat infertility. We're in the middle of a fertility series in my women's group. We've already had 2 experts come and do exclusive interviews with us. We have 6 more experts lined up every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central. If you can't make it to the live call, all the calls are recorded in the group. So click the link in my description if you want to join. You can learn more about fertility awareness, education, natural family planning, nutrition for fertility. You can hear from a doula, holistic practitioners, an OBGYN, an herbalist. There's a lot of different people coming in to talk about how to optimize fertility for women who want to have children naturally. So thanks for listening. If you guys have any questions or comments, you can put it down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye.